You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Time to sharpen those swords. You're listening to Sabres Semantics, a hard-hitting interview and discussion show featuring players, alumni, media, and all others who have or still cover the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. With interesting stories from the past and current objective analysis, this show is sure to provide an entertaining and unique perspective for both Sabres and hockey fans alike.
Oh, brother, we are not worthy!
Exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Now, here's your host of Sabres Semantics, Brandon Caputo.
Welcome into another episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Check out their up-to-date job board at ehc.on.ca to find your next work opportunity today. I'm pleased to be joined today by a special guest co-host, as Austin is away for Canadian Thanksgiving, so I figured this would be a great time to bring on a special guest, and that would be Joe Yerdon from Noted Hockey and Bleacher Report. Before we get going, make sure to give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. And thank you to everybody choosing to listen to us today on the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like and subscribe and smash that bell. And thank you to those today listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. So with that said, I'm going to welcome on my special guest, Joe Yerdon. Joe, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I know we've been able to cross paths a little bit for the Sabres Prospect Challenge the last couple of years, and through a few Sabres games I was able to cover last season, but it's a pleasure to have you on here for the first time on the show.
No, it's really cool for you to invite me on. I've been keeping up with your work here, especially doing a Sabres podcast. I gotta make sure I keep up with what everybody's talking about. So you guys do a great job. So it's cool to be sitting in the guest chair here. This is nice.
Before we get going here, Joe, where can people that maybe aren't necessarily familiar with your work here on the Canadian side, where can they find all your great work that you're doing with Noted Hockey and Bleacher Report? And I know they can give you a follow on X as well.
Yeah, on X you can find me at my name at Joe Yerdon, JoeYerdon. At notedhockey.com. That's where I do the bulk of my Sabres coverage is over there. It's a pay site. Sorry, folks, but somebody's got to pay the bills here, and that somebody's me. $5 a month, $50 for a year. If you pay more than what's the level? If you pay more than $75 a year, you can be you can be my noted editor, and I'll do a story of your choosing, hockey story, of course. I'm not going to write about like world geothermic energy or anything like that. But I'll write the hockey story of your choosing if you want to see that. Had a lot of people sign up at that level, and nobody's asked me to do a story for them yet. I'm just kind of sitting here wondering, anytime, guys. But yeah, like I said, $5 a month, $50 a year. And then, if you want to pay more than that, cool. And bleacherreport.com on the NHL side, we have a great team of folks there. Myself, Sarah Sivian, Adam Gretz, Lyle Richardson, Lyle Fitzsimmons, just anybody named Lyle from Canada. I think we have them. I think we have them on board with our site. So, but we do tons of stuff, lots of fun, lots of good analysis, and we try to enjoy ourselves over there with doing some things. I got to finish up a piece here tonight. So, but yeah, it's a good time there.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that nobody sends you any requests to do how much you love Aaron Rodgers.
Thankfully, Aaron Rodgers doesn't play hockey, so that would spare me, because that would be me grinding my teeth down to nothingness to try to write something positive about that guy. He's haunted me my whole life. So watching me, not being a Bills fan and being surrounded by Bills fans and watching the Bills beat him, kind of an enjoyable night as a non-fan of either team.
Yeah, that must have been great to see. But I know you've also worked for other companies in the past. Like, how long have you actually been covering the Sabres, and what was the, I guess, reasoning and passion of you wanting to get into this type of field and wanting to cover a hockey team for a living?
Well, I started in Buffalo in fall 2013. I was I was working with NBC at Pro Hockey Talk at the time. I had started there back in spring 2010, and started there like during the playoffs that year, and ended up like fast forward like 4 months later, I was the lead writer on the site because my Brandon Worley, who had brought me in over there, decided to leave the site and go into doing some other work, which good for him. I think he's doing really well. But I was running the site for the next year and then stayed on for a few more years full time. But they very much were not interested in doing a lot of reporting type stuff, even though it was NBC and they had the TV contract at the time, and you figure like, well, maybe they want to do some interesting stuff. Well, no, they had no interest in doing that. So I pushed for a couple of years to be like, hey, we should be doing more of this. And they're like, we don't see a value in that. And they're like, if you want to do that kind of stuff, look around elsewhere, we'd be happy to work with you. And I was like, okay, well, you might not like that too much. And landed the NHL.com gig in Buffalo, covering the Sabres, covering hockey in Buffalo, because there was a lot of Sabres action, obviously, but lots of other stuff going on. Pro hockey adjacent, college, World Junior stuff, like lots of that going on here. And weirdly enough, that year, they didn't have a Leafs reporter that season. So they asked me, they're like, hey, we know you went out to Buffalo. Like, can you get across the border? And I go, yeah, I get no issue there. You want to do Leafs games too? And I go, really? And they go, yeah. Like, if you're down for it, like, we'll have you cover both teams. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I went headlong into covering both the Sabres and the Leafs that year, which the Leafs of 2013-14 were a fantastic roller coaster train wreck, because I think they were like second in the division, or they were like top 3 in the East, I think, in January or February that year. And the floor fell out and they finished 12th in the East, which was just an unbelievable fall from grace for them. And the Sabres were the worst team in the NHL for the first of 2 consecutive years. They were going to be the worst team in the NHL. So it was fascinating. I watched a lot of the home teams losing hockey games that year. So it was not exactly like being in a packed, excited arena, although the moments from that first season are unreal. Like, there's just so much, especially on the Buffalo side for a losing team. It was just fascinating. But I started officially professionally writing in 2010. I was blogging for a couple of years before that. I was doing some college hockey radio work at WRPI in Troy, New York, covering the RPI Engineers, who were coached by Seth Appert at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've known Seth for quite a bit of time now. And so that's wild when I saw he got hired by the Amherst, and then even more wild that he's here in Buffalo where I am now. So it's pretty damn cool. I'm not going to lie there. It's pretty damn cool to have Seth here and being able to watch him kind of prove RPI for being pretty dumb for firing him years ago. But it was one of those things that I guess that was meant to be, because he's no longer at RPI and now he's in the NHL coaching, and probably one phone call away from being able to be an NHL head coach. So it's pretty damn cool. This has been a wild road for the last 14, 15 years.
Yeah, I'm sure that came full circle for Seth, being able to see you there.
Yes.
Even when he's come up and done some things with the prospect challenge and coaching that last year, you being able to ask him questions there. But yeah, you mentioned the roller coaster of what it's been like covering the Sabres the last 13, 14 years. Like, when we talk about a little bit about this season going forward here, Joe, like when they bring in Lindy Ruff again, all the nostalgia and everything, they talk about the things like the scoreboard and the new roof and everything like that. But it seems like the fan base, from what I gather from online and just in general, it seems like this is a year that they want to see them prove it on the ice. They brought in a coach like Lindy Ruff. Kevin Adams talked about wanting to have that accountability. Like, do you see a difference so far? I know it's only been 4 games, but just the atmosphere around the rink, like on practice days or morning skates or game days. I know the practices have been a little bit different under Lindy, but what have you seen so far in the philosophy change, and if there's anything that you've seen for Lindy Ruff's second tenure here as a Sabres early on?
Well, I'll say this: practices are a much different beast than they were under any of the previous coaches here that I can recall. Don Granato, Ralph Kruger, Phil Housley, Dan Bilesma, Ted Nolan, even that month of Ron Ralston I got to experience here, month and a half, maybe, if it was even that much. The way practices are run now and how Lindy drives competition as being part of practice and making sure these guys work at the same sort of intensity and speed and commitment that he wants to see during a game is a fascinating change of pace, because the group is so young, and they seeing them get pushed like this might even seem like a throwback for some of these guys, because I'm sure they got pushed like this during juniors and early on when they were younger, because those coaches tend to try to get everybody into lockstep so young, and they really push everybody. But this has been something a little bit different at the NHL level, because the practices are physical. Guys, it's not like guys are going out trying to hammer each other on the boards every practice, but if they're going, if they're doing a competitive drill or doing a 5-on-5 or working on special teams, if you're going into the corner, I mean, it's not like you're going to get a pass for going down there, a casual stick check, or maybe a guy will just come up and just give you a little nudge. Like, you're going to dig into that corner if you decide to pull up and try to reverse, because they want to stop you and you want to score. The power play wants to score on them. So it's the best way to get the best out of everybody, but it's a huge change, especially for the handful of guys that have been here long enough to have had maybe a couple of different. I mean, I think Dahlin. God, is Dahlin the longest tenured Sabre now? He might be. He might be. Well, it might be Tage. I don't know. I got to go back and look at that one, but it's close between those guys. But they got to have the Phil Housley experience, and then Ralph and Don. But this is a big change. This is a big change for everybody, and it's it's nice to see for once. I know some of the folks on the beat remember we're here for Lindy's first time around. They remember some of that stuff being like that, and to see it in working flow now is kind of like, oh, right, this is kind of a professional operation now.
Yeah, and for somebody that's around the rink every day, you're going and interviewing those guys in the room. You're watching practice. We saw what happened with Dahlin and Peyton Krebs the other day, which was a topic of conversation all day. Seemed like the other day, and with Dahlin being named the captain, the new leadership group as well. Like, I guess it's a two-parter. What do you think of the new leadership group under Rasmus Dahlin and his kind of growth into becoming that leader? And what was your opinion on that whole incident at practice with Krebs and Dahlin? Do you like to see a little bit of fire, and do you think that maybe a hip check at practice was just taking it a little too far, but also because the team just wants to get back into somewhat of winning ways here, starting off 1-3?
Well, I for one love the competitive fire like that. I mean, pardon me, not getting choked up on this, I swear. It's seeing that. I mean, obviously you don't like to see punches get thrown, but I mean, these weren't haymakers. This wasn't, it wasn't like he tried to sucker him or anything like that. And, on the video looks way worse than what it actually was. Dahlin coming in with the hip chat, catching him with the rear end, trying to flip him over, like, whatever. It's, people were just kind of like, that could have been a career-ending injury. And it's like, okay, like, let's calm down. Like, everybody just pump the brakes here a little bit. And all you need to do is to take the temperature of that, is to see how everybody reacted to it on the team. The players and the coaches, the coaches themselves, Lindy was just, the way Lindy explained it was great because he said, Raz, felt he got wronged and he went to go take the price out. So, it's, it is what it is. Boys will be boys. And like that, I think somebody in social media was like, that's the only time that phrase is acceptable in any way. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's perfect because they're both really competitive guys. Krebs drives people crazy. And, Darlene is such a intense competitor in everything. Like he's just wired in that way where, if they, after a loss, like he's the captain, so he's got to come and talk to us after a loss, which, nobody wants to talk to us after any loss. I mean, they don't really want to talk to us after a win most of the time. They want to go and have a nice night, but after a loss, they really don't want to hear from us. And you can tell that losses just absolutely chew him up. And, for being here for 5 years now, it's a lot of losses and it's a lot of like, not broken promises, but a lot of missed opportunities and coming up short, not making the postseason, and him watching, a lot of his good friends around the league go to the postseason, go to the Stanley Cup final, win the Stanley Cup. Like this, it's hard to do when you're not even getting into, you're not even going to the party at the end of the season. Like it's really hard. And, for a guy like him, like that stuff just gnaws at him. And, I think when you look at the leadership group here with Darlene at the front, and then it's Thompson, it's Tuck, it's Samuelson, it's Cousin, like those guys, like they're all wired the same way. They show it, and some of them show it in different ways. They're all wired the same way. Like they're very intense competitors. They like to have fun too. I mean, everybody likes to have fun. It's you're playing professional hockey. You better be enjoying yourself. If you're miserable, do something else, man. But like once Kyle Opoza was traded last year, I think there was, even with Zemgus Girgensson still being there, I think there was like a leadership void of sorts because and this is not a slight to Zemgus, I don't think he was meant to be the guy that was like, that had to kind of be the, the veteran in the room to kind of lead everybody and be like, all right, my turn. I'll lead the way. Zemgus wasn't going to be doing that. And I think that's when a lot of these younger guys realize, oh crap, this is on us. Like this is our team now. Like we got to run this. And now that they're wearing the letters and they're doing all that, the realization is very clear to them that like, okay, it's up to us to get this done. We got to take care of business here. And they know it's on them. Like they know it's up to them to make sure to get things taken care of and to be, to get this team in the postseason and to go from there. And it's going to be very interesting to watch how this unfolds throughout the year, because, if struggles will come up, but if it goes for an extended amount of time, how they handle that. And same goes for success. Like if they get a sustained run of wins and, they're looking good, do they get a little too high on themselves, or is it like business? Like, hey, some of us remember being here for a 10 game win streak. Well, maybe two guys remember that. Maybe one guy remembers that. I'm not even sure how many guys might remember that.
Skinner's not around anymore.
Right. But it's, some of these guys might remember some of those situations and being like, well, we got kind of high on our own supply, and then, the floor fell out and, same old thing happened. Let's make sure that doesn't happen this time. I think it's going to be observationally speaking, it's very interesting. Fans don't want to hear that stuff because they just want to hear, are they going to win? Are they just going to win? They got to get to the playoffs. And it's multi-layered for us when we look at it. Like, yeah, like they better win, or else, next summer might be really awkward.
Yeah, it might be. And speaking of summer, so we'll kind of talk about the outlook of the team and moving forward and the lines and everything in the second part today. But quickly, Joe, like when you look at the moves that Kevin Adams made in the offseason, they addressed the bottom six, the basically brand new revamped bottom six there with the trades for Ryan McLeod, Beck Mallenstein, and then bringing in guys like Obey Kubel. When you look at it, I know some people out there's part of the fan base that wanted them to go and get a top six forward. There's another part of the fan base that says they shouldn't need a top six forward if Zach Benson emerges and JJ Peterka was healthy and, Jason Zucker can kind of be in that middle six role as a winger. What did you think of Kevin Adams' offseason? And how do you think that sets them up in a better position than where they were last year? I know with the type of guys they brought in, it was strategic as well, and having to let go of guys like Skinner and Girgenson's the longest tenured Sabres gone. So what was your, I guess, opinion on how the offseason went in general and setting themselves up for this year?
I said to a couple of people when things wrapped up and, judgments started coming in from the fan base about how things went. I said, if this wasn't a team that was mired in a, decade plus long playoff drought, the moves they made to improve the bottom six would be met with approval and maybe not adulation. Like that's a lot for guys that are going to be playing those minutes, but those were the right moves to make for especially for building for what Lindy wants to do here. Like he wanted more speed, he wanted guys that don't shy away from playing physically. But I think speed was the biggest factor of that. I mean, that's why you trade for Ryan McLeod. He's a great defender and he's fast as anything. Like he's the fastest guy that I remember being here in Buffalo probably ever, but certainly like since Eichel, I would have to say. Jack was really fast, but McLeod's on a different sort of level there. I mean, when you're talking about like, well, he's him and McDavid are like in the same tier speed wise, and it's like, oh, well, when you put it that way, that's that's a whole different class of speed. So, but with him and and Aubé Kubel, just a really strong defensive forward. Malmstein is he just hits everything in sight. Sam Lafferty, we heard Darlene mention how he hated playing against Sam Lafferty, just drove him crazy. And that's a big compliment because that means Sam Lafferty is an intense competitor and he plays well at that role. So those are good things. Those moves were really solid. Just, when you buy out Jeff Skinner, scored 40 a few years ago, had a rotten year last year, still scored, 25 goals, and you don't replace him with anything. You're building your top six and looking at it like, well, if Peterka grows from that, if Quinn stays healthy and builds off of what he does, if Benson, starts potting more goals, if, it's a lot of ifs you're hoping can come through. At least 2 out of 3 you're hoping will play through because say Peterka has another 28 goal season. Well, that's cool, but if Quinn pops off for 30 or 40, well, holy crap, here we go. Benson scores 20 or something like that, and you're like, all right, this is what I'm talking about. But those are big ifs. Mm-hmm. If nothing's ever guaranteed in the NHL, but when you're building that lineup and saying well, if these things happen, we're golden. If Tage bounces back and has 35 goals, if Tuck has 30 again, you're asking a lot to come through when there's so much unknown, and you want to. I think the GM's job, you have to try to eliminate as many of those questions as possible. And I think buying out Skinner was the right plan. I thought came a year sooner than I thought it was going to happen. I thought next summer was going to be the Skinner buyout year, because then you're talking, 4 years on the cap, a little bit easier to stomach instead of, 6 years on the cap for a buyout now. But you're just looking at this at all right, well, you needed to have more of as close to a certainty as you could have in that top six. And you don't have that right now. Young guys competing for the ice time and, see if they can do it. Great. You like that. But if they don't score, again, it's another if, but if they struggle or if they, they find it hard to get going, then the pressure increases immensely on Cousins and Thompson and Tuck, because then they have to step up. There's no if around that. They have to step up to make it so that they can score goals. And when you don't address that, then you're left with a lot more questions of trying to get around it. And I think that's what makes it difficult. To me, it's a great season for Kevyn Adams, except he left himself a lot more questions.
Yeah, and we'll see if he does address those come the trade deadline or what have you. If there's a trade to be made, I'm not sure. But in my opinion, if he wanted to go and get a top six forward, he would have. That's the way I would have looked at it in the summer. And clearly he thought that, as you mentioned, a lot of ifs, but he must believe in this group. And, hopefully it works out for him. But again, it was definitely something that they didn't go out and get a top six forward was a little bit concerning in that sense. But The defense, I think, is pretty much solidified there with the top six. I'm not going to touch too much on that, but I want to touch on the goaltending because that was another area where people had wondered, okay, they signed Reimer, who now was claimed by Anaheim. What a Sabres tenure for James Reimer, but
0 games played. He literally did not play in the preseason.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But so Ukko Pekka-Luukkonen, obviously Lindy Ruff said in his press conference, I got 3 words, UPL. So that's the guy that they're looking at. I was under the impression that maybe they would give Reimer the backup job, a little bit similar to what Eric Comrie had last year, where he might not even play most of the games. They would call Levi up from Rochester to spot start here and there, but it looks like now that Levi is going to be the backup to UPL, and he's already played a game. So what are you thinking from the way that they're going to go about this goaltending situation? And it looks like Levi is going to be the full-time backup to UPL. He's not going to be the starter in Rochester, and with Reimer getting claimed by the Ducks, that makes it a lot easier, I guess, or force their hand a little bit. But what are you thinking about how they're going to go about the goaltending situation and what the percentage of starts are going to be this year for both of them?
I too kicked around the idea that maybe for the first month of the year, James Reimer would back up, and then maybe you have Levi just play games in Rochester because you need to have him playing games as opposed to sitting around and backing up. But if they were going to do that, they were doing it in a real weird way because, like I said, Reimer didn't play any preseason games, so it became kind of clear pretty fast that Devin Levi was going to be the backup, and it was just a matter of whether or not they could get Reimer through waivers and down to the AHL. Obviously, it didn't work out. Bad timing for the Ducks for John Gibson to have emergency appendectomy surgery. That's for sure, but. I think what we're going to see with the goaltending this year is it's going to be very similar to what Boston was doing with Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, except these two guys are really young. Linus and Swayman, like Swayman was young and Linus was more of a veteran, but like those guys are about as similar as you could get performance wise. I think there's still a little bit of not questions, but just wonder about. How is this going to play out? Because obviously Luukkonen had a great year last year. And the expectation is that he's just going to keep that going, which is fine. I think that's the right expectation to have because he took a big step last year and you're like, well, if he falls apart, that just stinks. But with Levi, he played really well in Rochester last year. He played very well in the playoffs, even though they got knocked out in the first round by Syracuse. But Devin's really good. He's a complete changeup from the way Luukkonen plays. Levi's, has to use his speed and he's active and a little bit unpredictable. I think Luukkonen's a little bit more not, I think he's a little bit more of like a traditional type goalie where, he's big, he covers a lot of net anyways. And then, he just plays the position the way, it's taught to be played. So that provides a nice change up because if you're preparing, maybe Levi pulls a few rabbits out of his hat, stopping some pucks that you thought were going in. And in Luukkonen's case, like he just plays so solid that he's shutting you down. And you're like, oh man, like it's going to be hard tonight. This stinks. Like we don't care for that. But I think percentage wise, I think you're probably looking at like a 55-45% split.
Okay.
I think it's going to be close to that because you just can't have Levi sitting around. And when you look at the schedule this season, it's so compact. It is so compact. And there's going to be a lot of like 3 and 4s, especially like some of these months. I think, what is it? I think in March, they play 16 games in March.
Wow.
16 out of 31 days, they've got a game in March. Like that's bonkers. So we're going to see a lot of both of these guys, but it's, Lindy's talked about this a little bit, he even said like, if there's a guy that's playing really well, he's like, you tend to lean on the hot guy, but you still have another very good goalie, backing them up to spell them and just kind of give everybody a break. So it's a nice problem to have. I just hope. I think the biggest thing for everybody though is that there's only 2 goalies in camp, so like they don't have to try to break it up amongst 3 dudes and figure out how to do it and have one guy happy starting and 2 others really ticked off about the situation.
Yeah, like hypothetically, if it wasn't Levi and let's say Eric Comrie or Reimer were still here, do you think that would have been more so like an 80-20 or 70-30 split? But because it's Levi and like you mentioned, they want to get him starts, it's going to be closer to that 55-45 or 60-40 split.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. Because if you have a veteran backup, you're looking to lean on your number 1 guy, and then if he struggles a little bit, then you've got somebody who's got the track record to be able to like, okay, let's give him a couple starts. Let's let the other guy reset and, get, clear his head and do whatever. But you're not counting on that guy to carry you because if you have to, you're in trouble. Whereas this case, you've got 2 high pedigree, 2 high prospect pedigree type goalies where if somebody's struggling a little bit, it's the open window for the other guy to jump in and be like, all right, maybe I can make this job mine. Right now it's Luukkonen's job, obviously, but Levi's played pretty well both of his starts. So we'll see how this goes. It's gonna be a long year, and I feel like there's definitive camps already built for one goalie or the other out there amongst the fans. But like I said, it's a nice problem to have. I don't think there's been a situation like this in Buffalo in goal since like what, Marty and Dom. Maybe or Marty and Ryan Miller, where it's like, hey, we got 2 really good guys here. This is cool.
Yeah, there most likely has not been that. The Sabres have been pretty fortunate with some elite goaltending, but as of late, that hasn't been there. But with UPL and with Levi, it definitely looks like they're in a good situation with that, and we'll see how it progresses throughout the rest of the season there. But great points there about, I guess, wanting to make sure both of them are in the net and staying fresh. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with more with Joe Yerdon. We're going to look at the outlook for the rest of the season so far through 4 games, what he's looking at from the line combinations, and we'll get our fan poll as well. So stay right here. Be right back on Sabres Semantics, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre. Back after this.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, located at 6100 Thorold Stone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, and Better Jobs Ontario information and registration assistance. Check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work since 1983.
This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
The great guys over at Hockey Stick Man are sponsoring this video. If you play hockey but are sick of paying upwards of $400 for top-end sticks, check these guys out. There's seriously no better place to shop. The guys are fun, easy, and offer a stress-free experience from start to finish. They get pro stock sticks from major junior teams right up to the NHL teams and sell them for half the price that the same stick would sell for at a retail store. To further support their mission of saving hockey families money, they offer closeout options, which entail taking last year's retail models and blowing them out for less than wholesale prices. It's literally the best prices on the internet for their sticks. And the best sticks of all may be their Pro Blackout series, which provide a top-end stick with no graphics and literally less than half the price of a branded top-end retail model. It's always been their best-selling stick despite super cool pro stock options. It's a no-brainer to shop with these guys, and trust me, they are beauties. Head over to hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm and get $15 off your first order. That's hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm to get an additional $15 off your first order when you sign up on their website. Check out our friends at Hockey Stick Man.
Wild Bill's Auto Repair is your local center for auto maintenance and repair in the Niagara region. Since 2012, Wild Bill's Auto Repair and Body Shop has been helping customers stay safe and confident on the road, knowing their vehicle is in top running condition through the garage's services. Located at 7868 Oakwood Drive in Niagara Falls, the garage started as a tribute to the owner's father, William Robert Hunter, who passed away, continuing the same community spirit and high level of service which customers can expect from him back at Hunter's Auto Repair. Their multi multi award-winning auto shop has earned the trust of the Niagara community with its fair treatment of all customers who can feel confident they'll get trustworthy advice and repairs during their visit. Their experienced crew loves meeting new people and looks forward to forming a lasting partnership for the care of your vehicles. To find out more or to book a service, contact them today at 905-358-7868 or wildbillsauto.ca. Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road since 2012.
In the Niagara region, Global Pet Foods is your destination for premium pet nutrition and caring expertise. Whether you've welcomed a new furry family member or need advice on top quality nutrition, their dedicated staff is ready to help. Discover why Global Pet Foods' lesser-known premium brands outshine the big corporate names. Their team's passion ensures your pet's health and vitality. Check out one of their locations today: 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where premium brands and caring staff make the difference.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
It's hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go, the boys in blue, white, and gold. Hey, hey, here we go, make some noise, get in the zone. All for one and one for all, let's hear you from your heart and soul. And we will stand, raising our hands, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo. We will be here till the end, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Sabres Semantics episode. Brandon Caputo joined alongside special guest Joe Yerdon from Noted Hockey and Bleacher Report joins us on today's show. Make sure to give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. You're into all the social media thing by searching Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to everybody watching on the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell to be updated whenever we post video content here on the channel. As well, thank you to those today listening to us on your favorite on-demand audio platform. So, Joe, as we look ahead now to what's happened so far through the first 4 games, I know at the time that this episode comes out, they're going to be playing a game tonight, and the line combinations and everything might look a little bit different, but when they went overseas for the Global Series against New Jersey, I don't think anybody was pleased with those 2 efforts there, the results of those 2 games, and then you also lost Obey Kubel, you lost JJ Peterka, and Zach Benson was a little bit dinged up over there as well, so it almost couldn't have gone any worse in a lot of aspects there. But when they came home, they played the LA Kings in their home opener, lost that game as well, but then were able to pick up the 2 points against the Florida Panthers this past weekend, mind you, without Alex Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk, and Bobrovsky got the night off, but they were able to finally get on track there. What have you seen through the first 4 games? And hopefully Peterka is going to be back in tonight's lineup because he has been practicing, as you've updated us on Twitter as well. What are you thinking from the outlook of what we're seeing going forward, and if this was just a little bit of turbulence that they've had to fight through at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think it was an awkward preseason because these guys had like a cram session of preseason games before they left for Europe, in which they played Pittsburgh and Columbus, who iced lineups that were better for the AHL and ECHL than they were for the NHL. And it wasn't too much of a challenge for the NHL guys. And, they only had one more preseason game before they face off against New Jersey. But the Sabres just wasn't, they looked rusty and they didn't look on the same page, which seemed to make a lot of sense over there. They didn't, maybe this is just from, hearing Lindy talk about this, but I felt like the first game, they weren't too bad. Some bad breaks here or there, whatever. The second game, there was so many great chances the Devils had in that game. And Levi played very well to help make it not be a blowout type game, but ultimately a loss anyways. But, that LA game, I think the LA game was the first game where we saw oh, this is how these guys are going to play. Okay, this is good. Because I felt like the 5-on-5 game was very good. Power play is obviously still a work in progress. So, it's coming. There's going to be a goal coming there soon. I wouldn't sweat it right now. Everything corrects itself. Nobody stays terrible all year. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that when it comes to Buffalo hockey, anyways. But it's but like you can see things going in the direction where it's like, all right, I see where this is the direction where they want this to be going, and they play a lot. They've played a lot faster in both games against LA and Florida. Played physical the right way, not physical chasing hits and just trying to be dopey about it on the ice. And they, and that's doing it without Peterka, doing it with Benson. Ruff said he doesn't feel like Benson's at 100%. And Kulik's still trying to get used to playing in the NHL and playing at that speed and kind of shaking off his own nerves of playing in the NHL, because it's a big step up for him. But I think if they get Peterka, if Peterka's back in the lineup, it sure seems like he's going to be, based on how practice went on Tuesday. Him with Thompson and Tuck, it makes all the sense in the world. And whether it's Kulik or Benson with Cousins and Quinn, it's a really solid group. I love the way, I think everybody loves the way Benson plays. Once he's at 100%, and even Kulik's looked better. Kulik certainly looked great on the power play. I mean, for a power play, it's not scoring anyways. That second power play unit has looked way more dangerous than the first unit. First unit seems a little bit kind of out of whack still, but like those guys have played very well. And then your bottom six, Jordan Greenway's probably been arguably one of their best players to start the year. Greenway's been incredible. And he was the guy I had the biggest worries about going into the year, because I didn't know if he was going to have the speed to be able to keep up with everybody. I know nothing, because Greenway's looked awesome. So, and that's playing with McLeod and Zucker, who are both pretty fast skaters. McLeod, obviously, and Zucker's not a slow skater, but like those guys just have found a way to make it work. And Greenway's doing it by kind of mucking things up and getting in around the net and just wreaking havoc around there. So, and the fourth line, listen, I know Peyton Krebs was kind of a hot topic just for a lot of reasons. Krebs has looked really good. And when he was playing on that line with Thompson and Tuck against Florida, he looked great. He was taking advantage of the opportunity, but he was on top of everything.
But you mentioned Greenway and Krebs. Those are two guys that going into the season, we were wondering where they kind of sat, because now that Don Granato's not here, where do those two guys fit in the shuffle? Krebs got the 2-year extension, and Greenway's going to need a contract at the end of the year. But as you mentioned, good positive start from them in that sense, as we kind of look at the forward lines that most likely will change, I'm sure, today. But as we go forward, you mentioned Peterka up there with Tage and Tuck. You have Benson with Cousins and Quinn. Greenway with McLeod and Zucker, and then Malmsteen, Krebs, and Lafferty. The struggles they've had with the power play unit so far, you said they've done some good things, but it just hasn't translated to goals. Have you seen a shift in the way that the power plays ran under Lindy Ruff and Seth Appert, as well as his assistant? And what do you think is going to get them over the top, if there is any issues, in your opinion, that are going to be lingering, or that this might just be a little bit of a bump in the road?
This has been a learning process for this power play, because Appert's introduced a completely different, covered a lot of games in Rochester, so sort of familiar with how that looks and what they do with that. So seeing it at this level's kind of like, oh right, that's what Seth does with this. I get it. It's the drop pass stuff, which people have, are getting recoil effects from seeing it, with previous coaches in Buffalo, where it's like, oh man, this thing again. Okay. It's a drop pass with a purpose. The way it didn't work in the first couple of, certainly the 2 games in Jersey against New Jersey, and even against Los Angeles, it didn't work because there was a lack of confidence in what they were doing, and a lot, not having enough reps with it, in practice or in games, to know all right, this is how we're supposed to do this. That, when they're doing these drop pass entries, it has to be done with speed. Right? A lot of it was very predictable, very easy to pick off, and we saw it a couple of times. Guys knocking the puck off their stick as soon as they hit center ice, and it's turning into a calamity trying to catch up to that guy taking off with the puck the other way. But when it's played right and played with speed and a determined attack, it puts it puts the opposing PK on their heels instantly, and that causing that kind of chaos is kind of what Appert wants to do with this power play. Even though every time we're looking at it, we're writing it down as like the kind of standard 1-3-1 setup in the zone. They don't exactly do it that way. They present a lot of different looks. Like the first unit has both Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin on it. So you've got two guys that can quarterback it from the top, and the other guys on one of the flanks to rip shots. So that's a nice weapon to have. Both Power and Dahlin can really bring it. And then you've got Thompson on the other side where we know what he can do. Mm-hmm. So once these guys get acclimated to getting into this flow, and the whole key to it is just having guys get moved around. Like you want the PK guys to be kind of running around and trying to keep track of everybody. And that opens up other guys for shots. And then if you do get set up, well, you've got guys in front of the net, whether it's Cousins or, you've got Zucker in front to maybe sweep home rebounds with the first unit. And then Cousins, in that bumper spot where he can shoot it, he can distribute the puck from there. He can do whatever. And then, the second unit, same way. You've got Tuck parked in front of the net. That's a big body. You've got Zach Benson in the middle to distribute and just be a total pain in the ass, really, around the net. And then you've got Quinn shooting. You've got Bo Byram running really, really good up top. And then Peterka or Kulik on the other side, where pretty good. So, you're looking at units where it's, where you see what the makeup is and what they want to do with this stuff. It's just a matter of executing the right way. If they gain that zone, make the next pass a good one, because a lot of times that second pass, once they gain the blue line, the second pass wasn't going anywhere and it was getting swept out of the zone and cleared. So, but it takes time, which nobody wants to hear. Nobody wants to hear it takes time. But this is a completely different sort of power play that they're running compared to what Don Granado was running, compared to what Ralph Kruger was running, which were, those two were kind of similar, which I imagine was because Don Granado drew up the power play for Ralph Kruger. So, those looks were very similar. And so this is a different thing. And I think, trying to not run the same thing back again this year, that's exactly what you had to do, because it didn't work anymore last year. And so doing something different is good. It's just, you need more reps to be able to get it down. And once, all it's going to take is one power play goal, and that's going to fix it.
Yeah, and when you look at it, they don't have JJ Peterka on the first power play unit. Maybe that's because they want to ease him back into it. Coming off that concussion, we'll see where he kind of fits in there on the top power play unit, or like you said, maybe they try to roll two dangerous power play units in that sense. But I know it's been a topic of conversation. I've got the player stats up on the video version for you guys following along. Rasmus Dahlin, only 1 point through the first 4 games. Obviously, this is a guy that around the league is thought of as a very, a guy that's going to be a solid power play quarterback and has already shown glimpses of being an elite defenseman in this league. There's also been question marks on if he is 100% healthy. From what you've seen through the first little bit here preseason and the first 4 games of the regular season, do you see anything that would alarm you of the way Dahlin's playing, or do you think it's because he's got this added responsibility of being the captain that maybe he's trying to work a little bit more in that sense? Do you see any concern with the way that Dahlin started through the first 4 games of the season, or is this just something that he's working through?
If there was something that concerned me, it would be the early lack of physical engagement. But I think that was because of coming back off an injury, or playing through something. That's going to happen. You don't want to be dealing with something and go full bore and make it worse, and then maybe miss a lot of time. Whatever it was obviously not something that was bad enough where it was like, hey, maybe you need a game off, maybe need to do that. The point production I'm not sweating right now, mostly because they scored 3 goals the first 3 games, so points are at a premium to begin with. But it's it's early, so I think sometimes these things take time, and once the power play gets going, that will solve a lot of the point scoring stuff. And once he's and this is not to say he's not engaged. He very much is. But once they get into a better flow of action here, and some of these pucks start going in, suddenly a lot of those first second passes are going to become assists, and all will be right in the world. I would love to see him rip some more shots, because you see him rip them in practice or morning skates sometimes, and you're like, Jesus, man, like just let it fly like that during a game, because holy smokes, I've told him before that, like, I hate that I felt surprised sometimes when I'd see him do that, and he just kind of smirk and be like, he's like, yeah, why? And I'm like, I didn't know you could hammer it that hard. He's just like, well, I've been working on it. I'm like, okay, all right, man, sure. Like, I get it, but like, the kind of underlying thought is like, let it rip some more, man. Just tee it up. I mean, listen, it's way more fun to dangle guys out of their boots and make them look stupid. I get that, because that's really fun. But sometimes when the situation calls for it, just let a bomb rip, man, and see how it goes. Shea Weber made a career out of it. A lot of Al McInnes made a career out of it. Like, all these guys were, Doug Wilson too. Like, go way back in the annals of time here for hockey, for guys that had big shots. But yeah, it's everybody's off to kind of a slow start right now. But once this feels like a team that once they start going in, I think it's gonna become a pretty steady flow for them, because I just look at it. There's way too much talent to keep it all down. It could be an old take exposed later on if it doesn't play out. I get, but it's just he's been so good, and there's another, to me, like, he's so good, but to me, there's another step that's still yet to be taken with him, and I think we're gonna see it. We're gonna see it soon. I would find it hard to believe that like he's gonna stay at this level, which means he's a very good defenseman. But I feel like there's that eye-opening moment left for the league where it's like, whoa, okay, this guy's one of the best in the NHL, hands down.
Yeah, where you think that he could be in the Norris Trophy conversation with the potential that he does have, because he's shown flashes of it the last couple of years. I know last year was a down year, but that was after everybody had a career year. Everybody couldn't replicate with another career year like the Tages and the Cousins and those types of guys. But so I guess that would lead me into our fan poll here, Joe, and it would be what is your level of concern for the Sabres start of the 24-25 season through the first 4 games? Not concerned at all, indifferent, small sample size. Somewhat concerned or very concerned, indifferent, small sample size, won this at 47.6. Second was somewhat concerned at 28.6. Not concerned at all was 19, and very concerned was only 4.8. So is that a little bit what you would have expected there, and where do you kind of lean on it?
Yeah, that sounds really level-headed, honestly.
For Sabres Twitter, it's pretty good.
It's not a ton of panic. I guess that means we're just hearing from the loudest, most panicked people on Twitter then, because so much of what I've read has been so dour and so negative. It's just like, oh my God, guys, please just go outside for a little while. Please just, it's the sun's shining. It's fine, man. It'll be okay. But I can't say I'm indifferent, because that just means you're apathetic to just being like, well, whatever. For me, it's maybe this is just me just using it like a synonym, I guess, but to me, this is something where, the way the schedule was and the way everything was, like, if they got out to a hot start, I would have been surprised. Like, if they came out, just all guns blazing, like blowing everybody's doors off, I would have been like, this was unexpected. Like, you'd think like, oh, Lindy effect. All right, great. Like, yeah, this is cool. Or, or maybe the Don's not here effect, or whatever, whatever you have. Like, you'd be thinking like, maybe that's what it is. But learning what Lindy wants to do, like, that's an adjustment period. And, getting used to a new coach is an adjustment period. And you're not always just going to come out all guns blazing right away. I'm more encouraged that we've seen a closer version to what they want to be like the last 2 games. If they played against LA and played against Florida the way they did in Prague, I'd be worried. Like, that would be a definitive, like, like, how many losses before they actually get in the win column, becomes the question then, because it's like if they played that poorly continuing through, that would be very concerning. But these past two games are very, very encouraging as far as I'm concerned. They're still not clicking 100%, but it's a lot closer to where they want to get to. And that kind of the adjustments and the improvements of that are good. So I understand the concern. I understand the negativity. I understand all of it. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since good things have happened in Buffalo, but writing them off now, that's silly. Hell, we had the one year where they rattled off 10 in a row in October, November, and it was like, oh my God, playoffs, here it comes. And I'm like, guys, there's 60 more games. And, let's slow down a little bit.
Yeah, in this case, there's still 78 games left, so there's still a long way to go. And before we let you go, Joe, right now they're sitting 14th in the conference right now, and you look at their upcoming games here. As you mentioned, they've got Pittsburgh, Columbus, Chicago, so like some weaker teams within the schedule. Then you've got Dallas, Detroit, and another matchup with the Florida Panthers within the division. So when you look at those upcoming games, the next six games starting tonight in Pittsburgh, so that's a possible 12 points that they could pick up in the next 2 weeks. This shows on a bi-weekly basis, so we look at it from 2 weeks at a time. What would you be pleased with how many points that they pick up in the next 2 weeks here out of a possible 12?
Out of a possible 12, I think as long as you're on the right side of 50%, that's good. 6 out of 12 is probably still like unacceptable unless it's 3 wins or 2 wins, 2 OT losses or something like that. I'd say a good road trip would be 8. I think you could call that a good road trip. 6 should be the baseline, though.
And lastly, is there a player that you're looking at that maybe has had a slower start, or that you're thinking is really that you've seen in practice and everything like that you think is really about to turn the corner and have a strong trajectory as we move forward here in the next couple of weeks and month or so?
I honestly think Cousins, because I think Cousins' biggest problem is that he gets in his own head. And that caused, if you wanted to use a cliche of, a guy squeezing a stick too hard, he'd be carrying around 2 fistfuls of sawdust at this point, or whatever graphite turns into, like powder. I don't know. I don't know what the hell these sticks are made of anymore. So like whatever you squeeze, like just 2 clumps of metal. I don't know, man. But he can be his own worst enemy a lot of times, because he's overthinking. He's doing so many of these other things right. And the offensive side, it's like you can see when he's got a big chance, he's like, the eyes are wide and he's like, oh yeah, here we go, goal time. And then, goalie makes a dumb save, or, he pooches it, just misses it wide or high or something like that. I think Cousins, I almost picked Quinn just because I've been beating the drum for Quinn all preseason. Like, I think he's gonna have a monster year, but I think Cousins is the guy that I think we'll see bust out here soon. Well, great stuff. I hope our listeners and viewers enjoyed having you on, Joe, because this is great. Obviously, you're around the team on a daily basis. You see the practices. You talk to the players. You've been here through thick and thin with this team in the last 13, 14 years of what it's been like. But we really appreciate you being able to come on today and give your insight. Again, make sure to like his stuff on Noted Hockey and Bleacher Report, and as well give him a follow on X at Joe Yerdon. Joe, hopefully we can have you back on at another point in the season, and hopefully your predictions and everything you've talked so eloquently about on this show today will come to fruition and make you look even smarter. I hope so, because that would be the first time that's happened. No, it was hopefully the good stuff comes forward here, because it would be nice change of pace to be able to say like, all right, we're going down a good path here. Let's keep it going, as opposed to just kind of going over the same old storylines that we've been doing for over a decade.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap up another episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre. Thank you to everybody watching us today on the video version on YouTube and those today listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. For our special guest, Joe Yerdon, my name is Brandon Caputo. We'll talk to you again very soon. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.